Texans offensive coordinator Bobby Slowik was on the Greenlight podcast with Chris Long the other day. And first off, I cannot recommend Chris Long's podcast highly enough. Chris does so much research. He's so smart. I think he's honestly one of the best interviewers, former athlete or otherwise, in sports media today. But he got into it with Bobby Slowik about a whole bunch of stuff and a whole lot of CJ Stroud. And they opened up talking about CJ Stroud's work ethic.
Fearless competitor and worker to the point where he probably needs to get more sleep. Like really. He'll be up watching film, and this isn't even game plan time. And when we're talking right now in training camp, he's sending texts to receivers, to coaches, to everybody from film, of clips of how he wants to make some adjustments, things he's thinking through the course of plays. And it's like 11:30 p.m., man. Go to sleep, CJ. Come on, man.
So Bobby is completely serious when he probably has told CJ about, like, let's be sure you're getting your sleep and your rest so you can stay fresh. I was talking to D'Amico Ryans after practice the other day, just chatting with him, and we were talking about the things we had learned as players and how impressed I am with the way that D'Amico has incorporated some of those things that, man, when you're a player, you're like, I really wish it wasn't done like this. And D'Amico has just gone full force in implementing a lot of those changes, and it works really well. But one of those is just sleep. And this is why I'm so glad that Tom Brady is a mentor to CJ Stroud, because there's so many things above the X's and O's that Tom Brady learned over the course of his career. And he's talked a few times that I've seen him about finding that balance between getting the right amount of rest, getting away from the game, while also channeling that obsession you have into what one of my listeners gently corrected me the other day and said, hey, you don't want CJ to be obsessed. You want him to have competitive passion. Yeah, and you want to tamp down that obsession to the point where it's competitive passion. After that, they got more into the nuts and bolts of what makes CJ just so special.
When he throws outside the numbers past 15 yards, like somewhere between 15 to 20 yards on the sideline, last in the progression, snapping back to it, not when it's number one, that's rare that someone can do that.
Yes, and we know these outs to Nico and Tank last year, Robert Woods at times, Noah Brown, all those guys, they were immaculate. And the really cool thing was the progression that we saw during the season, where over the first half of the season, teams started to realize how money that was for the Texans, and those windows got tighter and tighter and tighter. But the great thing in the way Bobby and CJ were working together last year was they started to exploit that afterwards. They knew that DBs were going to be coming up and playing them heavy and jumping those routes. So they started hitting double moves. They started changing up the route combos a little bit. And over the course of the season, you started to see this evolve. And Bobby did a masterful job. Then Chris asked a very, very smart question about CJ's ability to throw off platform, and everything's not perfect, and you can't have picture perfect form where you take a couple gather steps and you hit guys in timing and rhythm.
There's a lot of guys that in the NFL have big arms, can put the ball down the field 60 plus yards. His ability to do that, again, not necessarily with his feet in the ground and in tight pockets, and put it out there accurately with the right ball flight. The ball's not too low, it's not too high, it's just right. Yeah, that's talent.
And I think that was one of the questions about CJ was, hey, he played behind this awesome offensive line in college, all these future first-round wide receivers and everything else. What was it going to look like when things weren't quite so perfect? And he'd shown evidence of it, and he'd had examples of him doing it in college. You just didn't have to do it as often as you have to do in the NFL. And yet, you don't have to rely on those types of throws all the time.
Yeah, and I think it's what's been fun with him is he can do all of that, and he also recognizes that, there's times to do that, and the more you do that, the less consistent you'll be. So he's very adept at, like, yeah, I know I can make this play. It was the right time to make this play. I let it go. But I know I can't just throw like this all the time, because I'm going to miss more than I make.
And that, honestly, above all other things that CJ did impressively last year, including just how good he was at processing, how good he was at reading defenses, all of that, it's judgment. Like, there's a difference between intelligence and judgment. And there have been some super smart quarterbacks in the NFL who have done themselves in by not quite having the judgment of when to take those risks and how often to take those risks. And that's how CJ ends up with a 1% interception rate, despite also being one of the best deep ball throwers in the league last year. But understanding when to take risks, when it's appropriate, he was freakishly mature in that regard, as evidenced by his interception rate. As a rookie, think about all the great quarterbacks who still, like Peyton Manning, threw a bunch of interceptions as a rookie. CJ didn't have that affliction. Honestly, talking about this stuff, I feel like I'm speaking like I'm hyper caffeinated, when in fact I've just had too many cups of Bobby Slowik this morning. And Bobby would actually go on to talk about those muddy pockets that you see in the NFL.
It's one of the biggest differences between the NFL and college is
Yeah.
you don't get clean pockets in the NFL very often, as you know. Usually you're going to have to move off your spot or control your spot and navigate to get back to a good base position with the smallest movements possible. And there's a lot of drill work that's gone into that.
So there's a difference between mobility and movement. You don't have to scramble always. It's a matter of a half step to the side to find a throwing lane. It's stepping up in the pocket to avoid the rush. And that's actually something that Lamar Jackson got a lot better at last year. Lamar Jackson, is freakishly as athletic as he is, he learned that, man, sometimes one step is better than seven, because you can keep your eyes downfield and you're keeping everything within your core so you can get back to that solid throwing platform, or you don't have to be as off platform when you make the throw. And it's part instinctual, but a lot of it is, as Bobby referenced, it's a lot of drill work too. And it's understanding, it's getting that muscle memory of just tamping down your urge to flee. Next, they talked about CJ's leadership, and this has been something that's been really fun to watch at camp. You can see the evolution of CJ as a leader on this team, but he had to lay the groundwork for a lot of that.
Having your teammates over, keep embracing that role. That's a big deal. And it's the other thing, this part, when he got here, I think came pretty naturally to him. Somewhere along the way when he was growing up, maybe, he had some mentors that really helped him out as far as leadership goes. And when he got here, that aspect of understanding everything the position entails and what you have to do for the team, he's knocked out of the park.
A lot of credit to Ryan Day and his staff at Ohio State, because they worked on that with him, and CJ sought out other resources for it. But CJ understood from the very beginning that first you have to form a relationship with people before you can lead them, really effectively lead them. You can't just rely on, hey, I'm the quarterback and you got to do what I say. There's got to be trust and there's got to be affection. And the affection comes before the trust in a lot of ways. Understanding what motivates different guys, them knowing that you care about them, all of that. So out at camp, we've just seen so many more instances where this year it's CJ's offense. And last year he was still competing for the starting job right up until he found out that he was going to be the starter the week before the Baltimore game. And he's been more of a taskmaster. He gets on guys, not like a jerk or anything, but because he's got those relationship with guys, and especially because he's established himself as the quarterback that he is, it looks frankly a lot like Tom Brady. And I'm not bashful about making Tom Brady comparisons anymore, because this is who he's taking notes from. There have been a couple times where CJ's, stopped practice and called the whole group together and given him a talking to when things have been sloppy out there. So look, it's hard to find more positive things to say about CJ Stroud, but the most encouraging thing, I think, from everything I've seen from CJ, from Bobby, from D'Amico, is that there's still very much a humility about this team, and I don't think they're letting things go to their head, and all the offseason adulation isn't making them think they're better than they are. CJ understands that he still has a long way to go in his development as a quarterback, because the great quarterbacks never stop learning, never stop trying to improve. They're always looking for, as Brady calls them, the answers to the test. And when you've got the answers to the test, when you know what the defense is doing, and when you're at the top of your skills, it's like cheating. And he's on track to be a really good cheater, legal cheating. It's been a really fun training camp so far. Watching these three wide receivers out on the field at the same time has been one of the most amazing experiences I've had in decades and decades of football. It's really, really cool. So please subscribe. There's so much good Bobby Slowik stuff here that I will do another reaction video to the rest of the team that he talks about. And again, subscribe to Chris Long's Greenlight podcast. It's really, Chris is impressive, man. He does a great job.